Welcome to week 3 of virtual sewing. Today we are going to start a table topper. For this project, you are going to need 1/4 yard of fabric, so that's 9 by 42 to 45 inches. Then you're going to need a 1/2 yard of fabric, which is 18 by 42 to 45 inches. This is what our finished project's going to look like. Okay, so our 1/4 yard of fabric is going to go where my lime fabric is, and my red dot fabric is going to go where my white fabric is. Before we get started sewing, I want to point out that for this project we're going to need our straight pins again, and you're going to want a thread that matches your fabric because you will see the stitching in between this week and next week. So for my project, I'm going to use red thread because it picks up the red from my popsicles, and I have the red in my 1/2 yard fabric. Before we get started sewing, press out all your fabric, and we're going to then start pinning. Okay, you should have your top edge completely pinned from one side to the other. Now we're going to start sewing. We're going to start sewing from this edge to this edge. It's okay if you have a little bit of an overhang. We're going to start on our middle piece, and we're going to go from here to here. We're going to use a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'm going to show you what that means on the sewing machine. Okay, now that we're sitting at the sewing machine, you can get out your seam gauge again, and we're going to mark our seam gauge with 1/2 inch. Okay, and we're gonna, if our needle is in the middle position, which mine is, you're going to look at your needle and your seam gauge, and you're gonna make sure that you're 1/2 inch away from your needle. So mine is actually this little line on the machine here. That's actually my 1/2 inch when my needle is in the middle position. But your machine might not have this guide. So again, we can use our blue painter's tape, and we'll mark it down using our seam gauge. Alright, after I stick it, I can check to make sure that I'm right, and I am. Okay, so now we can get started sewing. Okay, I'm also going to be using a straight stitch to stitch this. So we're going to start at the edge here, and I'm going to put my needle down, then my presser foot, and I'm going to stitch a couple stitches and then back stitch. Okay, I'm going to continue to sew with my fabric aligned with my blue tape, and as I go, I'm going to take out my pins. I also want to mention that you might want to keep your fabric on your lap again because this is a larger project and it helps from the fabric pooling on the machine. And when we get to the end, we want to make sure we back stitch. Okay. Okay, you should have your top edge stitched with 1/2 inch seam allowance. So we're going to take our 1/4 yard piece, and we now want it to match the bottom of our fabric. So you're going to have like a log. Okay, so you're going to take your pins, and you're going to go all the way down, make sure it's evenly matches the bottom. You're going to pin from start to finish, just like we did with the top edge. So from here, you can actually pin this way would be better. Okay. And here. And we're gonna go all the way down to this edge. Okay, you should have your bottom edge pinned from here to here. And now we're going to stitch this exactly like we did this side. We're going to use a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and you should already have your machine ready to go for that. Okay, so again, we're going to use our straight stitch and our 1/2 inch guide. And we're going to make sure when we start to stitch that we back stitch again, and we're just going to continue to sew it just like we did the last side, all the way down. And make sure you back stitch when you get to the end. Okay. Okay, you should have both of your seams done, sewn with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and you should now have this tube of fabric. So you're going to reach in and turn your tube of fabric right side out. Okay. Now you have a piece just like my finished table runner, with a accent piece in the middle, which is your 1/4 yard, and your 1/2 yard piece, which is on the sides and the back. Okay, that's it for this week. We're going to finish our table runners next week. See you then. Thanks for watching.